and Jesus not present inside, as is described in John chapter 20, verses 1 through 7, which says,
Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved, and said, They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him. So Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent over and looked in at the strips of linen lying there, but did not go in. Then Simon Peter, who was behind him, arrived and went into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the burial cloth that had been around Jesus' head. The cloth was folded by itself, separate from the linen.
These verses of the Gospel are proof that Jesus Christ was alive, while he may have been unconscious while he was placed inside the sepulchre. That is the reason why, when he regained consciousness, he removed the sheets in which he had been wrapped, and he shifted the stone on the mouth of the sepulchre and went out. Most Christians believe that Jesus Christ died on the cross, and then on the third day he was resurrected with his spiritual body. If this belief is to be taken as true, then the stone on the mouth of the sepulchre should not have been removed, because for a non-physical spirit there was no need to remove the stone in order to come out. Not only this, but for Jesus Christ to disguise himself when he met Mary Magdalene is an undeniable proof that after surviving the crucifixion, he feared that the Jews would catch him again. If it were true, as the Christians believe, that he had been resurrected with his spiritual body and not the physical body, then there was no need for him to disguise himself out of the fear that the Jews would catch him again, as it is recorded by John chapter 20, verse 14 to 16, which says,
At this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there. But she did not realize that it was Jesus. Woman, he said, why are you crying? Who is it you are looking for? Thinking he was the gardener, she said, Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him. Jesus said to her, Mary. She turned toward him and cried out in Aramaic, Rabboni, which means teacher.
This testimony doesn't end here. In another incident recorded in the Gospel, Jesus Christ himself negates the idea that the person the disciples could see after the event of crucifixion was a spirit or any apparition. He said to them, I am not a spirit, but a man of flesh and bone, and still carry the wounds of the crucifixion on the hands and the feet. This is recorded in Luke chapter 24, verses 36 to 43, which says,
While they were still talking about this, Jesus himself stood among them and said to them, Peace be with you. They were startled and frightened, thinking they saw a ghost. He said to them, Why are you troubled? And why do doubts rise in your minds? Look at my hands and my feet. It is I myself. Touch me and see. A ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have. When he had said this, he showed them his hands and feet. And while they still did not believe it because of joy and amazement, he asked them, Do you have anything here to eat? They gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he took it and ate it in their presence.
Hence, after crucifixion, for Jesus Christ to have met disciples together with all human signs and requirements is undeniable proof that he had escaped alive from the crucifixion. If in fact Jesus Christ had escaped from the crucifixion alive, his first priority should have been to get away from the Roman jurisdiction, because the Jews had already acquired a death sentence for him under the Roman jurisdiction. When we look up the map, we find Palestine at the eastern edge of the Roman Empire, so traveling further towards the east would have taken him out of the Roman jurisdiction. Not only was it essential for him to escape the death sentence imposed on him, but there was another very compelling reason due to which he had to undertake this journey. He had to travel to look for the 10 tribes which had migrated to the east much before his coming and were referred to as the lost sheep of Israel. Even before the crucifixion, Jesus Christ had made known his determination about this, as is recorded by John chapter 10, verse 16, where he says,
I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice. And there shall be one flock and one shepherd.
Hence, if Jesus Christ considered himself the messenger to Israelites, as is verified by the Gospels and the Holy Koran, then after deliverance from the cross, it is most fitting for him to have traveled to Afghanistan and Kashmir. Our viewers might be surprised to learn that the migration of Jesus Christ towards Kashmir was not only an inference, but a historic fact, the proofs of which have been preserved by history at so many steps along the way. For keeping the present review brief, here we will present only 2 of such references. The first we will take up here is the book titled Bhavishya Maha Purana, which was written in the 2nd century A.D., comprising of historical events. The book speaks of a meeting of Raja Shalbahan around the 1st century with a man called Isa, in other words, Jesus, who tells the king that he had come from the west, he was born of a virgin, and also that his people persecuted him, and that he is the Messiah. Similarly, the first most authentic and complete work of the history of this area, called the History of Kashmir, has stated that the grave in Srinagar, which is referred to as the grave of Yus Asaf, is the grave of that prophet to Israelites whose one name was Isa, in other words, Jesus, and that he had arrived here from the Holy Land. This would be a point worthy of note, that in Srinagar there is a tomb, generally called Raza Bal, where at the grave there is a plaque, upon which the inscription written in Persian reads as, "This is the grave of Yus Asaf." It is known amongst the people that this is the grave of a prophet. This prophet was sent to Kashmir. Even today, this holds the status of the grave of a prophet. Mr. Aziz Kashmiri of Srinagar University states that the grave known to be that of Yus Asaf is in fact the grave of Jesus. He says,
तमाम कश्मीर की तारीखों में यही लिखा है कि ये बाहर से आया है, ये प्रॉफिट था, ये पैगंबर था, और इस्राइल से आया, नस्वैन से अंदर बॉर्डर में आया है, और फिर यही तबलीग कर रहा है, वही जीसस है, वही मसीह भी है, क्योंकि यूस असफ के माने हैं जो कोड़ी के मर्ज में हूँ, उनको शिफा देने वाला, उनका इलाज करने वाला, जो शिफायाब हुए। यूस असफ के दूसरे माने हैं जमा करने वाला।
In this tomb there is another important relic, which is a stone upon which are the carved footprints of Yus Asaf. About these footprints, Mr. Aziz Kashmiri says,
अच्छी उम्र में ये फोत हो गया है और उसके पाँव के निशानात का पत्थर पर उन्होंने कुंदा कर रखे हैं, जैसे कि थे वैसे ही रखे हैं निशान के तौर पर। उनमें जख्मों के निशानात बिल्कुल साफ नजर आते हैं, जो सलीब पर चढ़ाने की वजह से उनके पाँव में जख्म आए थे।
The position of the scars just behind the toes do not match each other, but they would align if a single nail was driven through both feet, with the left foot placed on top of the right. After the crucifixion, Jesus traveling to Kashmir with his mother is also mentioned in the Holy Quran, where God says,
"And we made the son of Mary and his mother a sign, and gave them shelter on an elevated land of green valleys and springs of running water."
In this verse, God the Almighty has spoken of the miraculous refuge granted to Jesus and his mother. The word shelter, used here, has the inherent meaning of being saved from some calamity, while the word sign refers to some miracle. As to say, God Almighty has stated that we gave deliverance to Jesus and his mother from such a calamity that this was nothing less than a miracle. Then it has also been pointed out that after being delivered miraculously from that calamity, God granted them peaceful abode, at a place of high altitude with springs flowing around. Clearly, after the suffering of crucifixion, the miraculous deliverance and then migration to an area like Kashmir is pointed out in this verse, where there are mountains and springs all around. For Jesus Christ to disguise himself after crucifixion is also a proof of his migration, that he did not want to appear amongst the people openly, as it is recorded in the Gospels. Prophets of God are never afraid of their opponents and do not hide away from them. The only time they hide is at the time of migration, when they try to get away secretly, like is evident at the migrations of Moses and Muhammad, peace be upon them. Hence, it is only the imminent migration when prophets are required to maintain secrecy and go into hiding. Therefore, after crucifixion, for Jesus Christ to remain disguised and not to make his appearance known to the general public and the opposing Jews is a clear proof that he had received guidance from God to migrate. If he was not to undertake migration on earth, but was to ascend to heaven, then what was the need to remain disguised and to hide from the opponents? On the contrary, this was then his chance to ascend to heaven, in front of public, while the opponents would have watched helplessly in the utter humiliation.